Hello YouTubers, this is MusicCore here, and this is my review of Pink Floyd's album Meddle, released 1971. And a few things about this album before I get started is this album features one of Pink Floyd's greatest songs they ever put on record is on this album. And I think for some this is also, unless you count Obscured by Clouds, this is the last of the very experimental Pink Floyd. If you listen to it, you hear that experimental element still exists that didn't necessarily exist in Dark Side of the Moon. Wasn't really there that much in Wish You Were Here, Animals, or The Wall, but this album also features some of Nick Mason's best drumming is on this record. Now the track listing for this album goes One of These Days, A Pillow of Winds, Fearless, San Tropez, hope I said that right, Seamus, and Echoes. Now, One of These Days is what you could say could have led the groundwork for a lot of stuff, electronic music, could even say to a bit heavy metal. It really was a great song, featured a great bass opening. I believe it was a double bass opening with David Gilmour and Roger Waters both playing bass, and it really sounded great. And then he come to it just had a great drumming section with the dun 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 dun, and it just like drove it home. Another thing about this album is a couple of songs, especially Echoes, One of These Days, and Seamus, which later got renamed, which I can't remember the name of it, but it is on Live at Pompeii. It's the one with the dog and all that. So no, and the artwork, I didn't mention this in a review of Atom Heart Mother, but the artwork is done by an artist named Storm Thorgerson, who did, I believe, every Pink Floyd cover except The Wall. And I believe their first one. Their first one wasn't Thorgerson, I don't believe. It was just plain Jane psychedelic. But this is a great record. And now, One of These Days, also about One of These Days, before I move on to the next song, is the whole voice in it. I really dug that voice of the one of these days I'm gonna cut you into little pieces, and then moved on into this really great. And another thing about this, David Gilmour slide guitar on this song. I know some people might not know that, but a lot of this song, if you see David Gilmour play this live, it's actually with a slide guitar, which really made the song pretty good. Next song on the album, A Pillow of Winds. Now, here you get into the metal section in between One of These Days and Echoes, where some would say that it's filler, and it really, to me, didn't sound that bad. A Pillow of Winds featured some really great David Gilmour vocals on it, had a great David Gilmour slide guitar. It was very acoustic, it was very well done. I think some have said they tried to copy what they did with Atom Heart Mother. I really think they expanded on it to an extent with A Pillow of Winds, and it just really worked well and all that. So it was good. Next song on the album is Fearless. Now, this is one more than the song on the album that really had a blues element to it. Like, you could tell by the guitar playing there was very blues element in it. Lyrics were great for this. Like, this album really had some great lyrics. David Gilmour again's voice is one thing I'll say about David Gilmour. He has a great voice for this, and it really shone on this album. Him and Rick Wright especially. Next song, San Tropez, was more of an upbeat song. Like, it wasn't as, I'll say, slow moving as the previous two. It was a little bit more upbeat. It's just San Tropez, this is a song I haven't really listened to in a very long time, and it's sort of hard to remember some of the highlights of the song, but there was some highlights on it. I just right now can't really remember any of them. And then you get into Seamus, which Seamus had its points. The whole, I don't know, maybe it's just me. It's just the whole thing with the dog really was a good idea. I think the band did a good idea. But if you listen to how loud Pink Floyd played that day, that had to be very excruciating for that dog to listen to. And it was just I don't know, great song, but it was pretty decent. Like, I know I'm not going as in depth as I usually do on some songs because I think I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the next song and the final song on the album, Echoes, which, in my opinion, is the greatest song Pink Floyd ever issued on record. This song just starts off with the Rick Wright bing, bing, like, starts off with that sonar sound that really sets the mood, starts setting the mood. Then you get into a little bit more keyboard in there with a little bit of mood section, and then you get into a great David Gilmour opening guitar solo piece. Some have called it a bridge, some call it a solo. It's sort of out there, but the whole dun 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 dun, it's just really good. It worked really well for the song, and then you move in to the vocals. The vocals on this track were excellent with David Gilmour, Rick Wright. His vocal pairing was really good for it. And with even the opening, like, overhead the albatross hangs motionless upon the air, and deep beneath the rolling waves in labyrinths of coral caves. Just the way they did that, like double vocaling it in there, it sounded so awesome. And after the vocals, then you break into a really good part where it's the and it really worked, and I liked it. And then you get back into the next core vocal section of it, and then it moves into the experimental, and you hear a bit of Adam Hart Mother on this with parts, and I'm really hard to like explain it, but there is a section, it's I think the bass section with Roger Waters and the whole dun dun dun. It was just a good spot though, like it worked well. And even the guitar soloing and the stuff on this was really, I think, prog rock. I don't know if you classify it more as psychedelic rock, acid rock, prog rock. It's like a culmination of Pink Floyd's earlier work all thrown into one song. And it works so well. And then you get that really weird, eerie section with the sort of guitaring in it, and it really works. I love this part of the song. I think it fits. It sort of leads to a sort of like the climax of the song. It drops off and then it builds back up again with the sonar comes back in, then you get like this dun 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 or dun dun dun, or not really sure it's a dun 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 dun. It's sort of like a repeating bass line, and then you get into it, and then it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you get this it's a great piece, like just up to there, and then you move all the way up after that into the ending vocals for the song. And just when you think like sort of that thing built up so much, and you think, okay, are they gonna end the song? And then they go into that vocal and it sort of smooths it out really good, and it worked really well. This album worked really well together as like Adam Hart Mother, this album. Then you get into Obscured by Clouds, which was the next album, and I will review that album because I think I should review the soundtrack albums for Pink Floyd. Because I think people who have reviewed them I've seen have done an absolute shit job in reviewing them. I think they go into the mindset that it's Dark Side of the Moon, and it's not. It was featured probably some of David Gilmour's best guitar work. Like, it really bridged Meddle and Dark Side of the Moon. Because if you don't listen to Obscured by Clouds, you go from Meddle over here to Dark Side of the Moon over here. It's like completely like, whoa, what happened? What I miss? And Obscured by Clouds sort of bridged that together. But no, Echoes then ends with a very mellow, very Rick Wright, David Gilmour work together and everything. And this album to me is, how do I put this? Because I feel this album is the last of the real Pink Floyd. Before Dark Side of the Moon, before the explosion. This was the end of the experimentation, I believe, with Pink Floyd. Because after this they went very, well, Obscured by Clouds had its, like, elements of underground. I think this was the end of underground Pink Floyd, where people started, I think there was a lot of pressure on the band to finally do something commercial, and they did Dark Side of the Moon. But this album, if you can find, oh, sorry about that, sorry, took the thing. If you can find this album anywhere, buy it. It is worth its weight. Like, this album probably has some of Pink Floyd's best work on it. I know some people are thrown off by the middle section, don't like it. I personally enjoy it. I know didn't go into too much depth about it, but this album to me makes it worth it. And people ask why. It's sort of like if you're buying an album, it's an artwork. You're buying like artwork, and it's an album that to me deserves to be remembered, deserves to be listened to, played. It's great. It's just a great album. If I had to give this album a rating, I'd have to give it a 10 out of 10. Just like Atom Heart Mother, this album took Atom Heart Mother and it raised the bar even higher for Pink Floyd. Like, you're talking about 20-minute songs and they're like pumping them out like nobody's business. But no, so that's my review. If I have to give this another, yeah, it was 10 out of 10. It was a very good album. Not sure what I'm gonna do for my next album. I think I actually might review, not sure if this is true or not, the first concept album and the first double album sort of all in one. Frank Zappa's masterpiece, Freak Out, his first record. No, so, and another thing I'd also like to mention is I posted my last video with a little snippet of a Pink Floyd song, and I get a thing saying from EMI is pissed off, and this video is not shown in like 280 some countries, and this is, which includes most of the nations in the world, and the ones that aren't included, it's like, who the fuck lives there and who has internet? So, just my little thing, pretty much EMI, get off your ass and all that, and like, it's not copyright infringement, there's no copyright infringement, this is a fucking review. So, yeah, buy the record, it's worth it. This is Music Horror signing off. Peace.